Hello everybody, my name is Matt and welcome to part 4 of this JavaScript tutorial series where today we're going to talk about type conversions. Now what a type conversion is it's exactly what it sounds like for one, but it's a way for you to take something of one data type and turn it into something else that's a different data type. Now why would you even want to do that? Well, let me just give you a really practical example. Let's say I have a variable, and we're going to call this num1 equals 5. And then let's say I have let num2 equals the string 3. And then when I console.log, let's do num1 plus num2. Now, if you have to, pause for a second and try to think what the result of this problem is going to be. And I guarantee, unless you have knowledge of JavaScript and how this works, you're probably not going to have any idea what this is going to turn into. But just try to guess. What is number 5 plus string 3 equal? Well, when I run this in the log, we're going to get 53. Now you might be wondering, Matt, how in the world is that possible? How is 5 plus 3 53? Shouldn't it be 8? Well, of course. The way that this works is whenever you have a number that is in a string format, by default, whenever you run an addition of a stringed number and a regular number, it's going to use what is known as string concatenation. Now, I know that's a huge word, but what that essentially means is it's going to smush those two values together into a single string. It's going to convert number 1 to a string, and then it's going to push them together and create a new string that is both of those values put together as one value. Now, how do we solve this problem? I'm so glad that you asked. The way that we solve this problem is by using something known as type conversion. The way that we can solve this problem is we could do two different things. Well, I guess three different things technically. We can use what is known as the number function, which is built into JavaScript. And what we would do, let's just use our console.log to get an idea as to what this would look like. We would type in a capital, the word number, then an open and close parentheses around our variable name. Then when we run our code here, boom, now we're getting the value of 8. Now you might be wondering, Matt, you said there were 3 different ways to do this. How is that possible? Isn't this the only way? Well, no, it's not. Whenever you're using strings, there is actually a total of 3 ways that you can do this. You can use this number. You can also use what is known as parse int. And I'll explain what this means here in a second. And you'll still get 8. And then you can use what is known as parse float. And it works just the same. Now the difference between these is that, for example, parse float says, I want to convert this to a number, and I want to include all decimal places. So let's just say I have 3.14, aka pi. Pi day was a few days ago at the time I'm recording this, so given honor where honor is due. Whenever I run this, it's going to include the 3.14. Let me actually remove the math for a second so that we can see how this works. Whenever I run my code, we're going to get 3.14. The number version. It's highlighted in yellow, or not highlighted, but it's in the color yellow, which in this editor is saying this is a number. Now, if I were to use parse int, this is saying I want to convert it to a number, and I do not want to include the decimal places. And this, just so that you're aware, this does not round anything. So if this was 3.94, when we run this, we're still going to get 3, because what it is saying is I want to go all the way until we get to a character I'm not looking for, which in this case is a period, and then I want to just completely eliminate the rest of it from my log, from my parsing. I want to parse all whole numbers, and the moment that I reach something that is not a whole number, I want to stop. And then, again, as I mentioned before, parse float is going to include that. Now, what's the difference between parse int and then just using number? Well, parse int is only going to use numbers. So if I were to put 3, technically number and parse int are both going to give you 3. But the difference is how they handle unneeded characters. So if I were to include 3h and then I were to use parse int, this would still work just fine, because what it does is it says I want to get all whole numbers, and in the moment that I reach something that is not a whole number, I want to just eliminate it entirely and not use it. Now, if I were to use number, then you're going to see that we get a different result. When I use number, we're going to get not a number, because it's saying no matter what, I want to take everything in this string and I want to convert it into a number. So it's a good idea to get in the habit, if you're converting strings to numbers, that you use the parse functionality and not the number functionality, so that way there's no chance of you running into not a number. However, I know that's very difficult if you're not converting number strings into numbers, but you're trying to convert other things like a Boolean, for example, to a number. So the number has its place, the number type conversion, but I highly recommend using parse int or parse float when and where necessary. You probably will use this at some point, and it is important to use this whenever you're trying to see if the result of that entire string would give you not a number. But what we're trying to get here is just the number, and so by doing number, we're not achieving that. We want to use parse int. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. That is one way, or I guess technically three ways, that we can convert strings to number. Now, there's actually one more way that I guess this is not technically a type conversion function, but it is a way to convert something to a number anyway. And that's using what is known as a unary operator, which is putting the plus sign before your variable name. And when you run this, you're still going to get not a number, because it's still trying to convert the entire string. But this works really well if you have just a number, because when you do this, you're going to get the number 3 and not the string 3. I don't recommend using the unary operator, again, for the same reason that I mentioned the number functionality, but it is something that can be really helpful if you're trying to convert just a number that you know is never going to have anything other than a number that's in a string format to a number format. All right, I think we've talked about converting to numbers enough. Let's talk about how we can do the complete reverse. Let's say I wanted to convert something to a string that is not already a string. Well, there's a few ways that we can do that. I'm not going to give a set number like I did with number, because I realized that my counting was way off. Instead of there being 1 or 2 or 3, there was actually 4. So my number was wrong. So you can put in the comments if you'd like and roast me for how terrible I am at counting. But I don't care. It won't hurt my feelings. I have the feelings of someone who does not have their feelings hurt easily. So yeah, go for it. Anyways, the opposite of converting, in this case, we could do this a number of different ways if we want to convert something to a string. So in this case, we're going to be using num1. One way that you can do it is the exact same way that I mentioned before. You can say num1 plus num2, and it's going to convert it into a string by pushing everything together. Now, let's just say that you have 5, and then the string that you want is my kid's age is, and then you want to put this in the place of this blank spot here at the end. Well, the way that you can do that in this case is say num2 plus num1, and when you run this, you're going to get a complete sentence, my kid's age is, and then it's going to put the 5 in that string. That's one way to do it, and that's perfectly valid, and it works just fine sometimes, though it is not really recommended. Another way that you can change something to a string from a number is you can use the name of the variable dot to string and then an open and close parenthesis. I want to run this built-in toString function and convert this variable to a string. Now when I run this, we're going to get the string version of 5. Okay? We're not going to get the not Boolean, not the number 5, but the string of 5. And the way that we can check this, we can say type of, and when we run this, we're going to see that this is of type string. Okay? That way you can see that I'm not lying to you. Let's see here at what else we got. I have my notes here so I don't forget anything. It's important to note that if you want the result of a math problem to return a stringed correct answer, you actually need to put the math problem in parentheses before putting toString, unless that math problem is tied to a variable already. So let's just say, for example, in this case, I wanted to do the stringed result of 5 plus 5. But when I run this, this is obviously already giving me errors. It says an identifier keyword cannot immediately follow a numeric value. The way that you solve this is you put the 5 plus 5 in parentheses. Now when we run this, it's going to give us type string, but let me actually show you what the result's going to be as well. And we'll see that it does the math problem, and then it converts it to a string. Okay, so there you go. That worked just fine, and that's one way to do it. Now, just like the number, you can actually use another function as well called string, and then an open and close parentheses num1, and this is perfectly fine as well. I will say most people use the .toString to basically indicate, okay, I want this variable to be converted to a string, though this is perfectly acceptable as well. Okay, so that is all the ways that I'm going to talk about type conversions here. There are other ways that you can convert things into other types, but we're not going to discuss that here because most of what we're doing is going to either be converting strings to numbers, or converting numbers to strings, or converting booleans, for example, to strings. If I want to have that boolean value returned as a string, then I might use a type conversion in that as well. But we're not really going to worry about converting things to booleans or to undefined or to null or not a number or anything like that. We're just going to worry about converting to a number or a string. And if we come across anything else that requires type conversions, then we'll go through it as needed. But yeah, for that's going to be it for this lesson today. I hope you found this helpful. Try this out some. Try some type conversions and see if it makes sense to you by practicing these on your own. But for now, that's going to be it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.